You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW, in Whitewater, Wisconsin. You're listening to WSUW, 91.7 FM, The Edge in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This is Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. I'm excited to be joined for this discussion by three esteemed guests. I have Dmitry Dubrovsky with us, who is a researcher at Harriman Institute at Columbia University in New York City. Alexander Flint, who's a popular blogger, and also elected representative. We had with us five-term Andy Jorgensen from Wisconsin State Legislature joining us as well. Andy and Alexander and Dmitry, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well, we are watching at a realignment of all sorts of things occurring in our country, in our world. We're seeing a president of the United States, incoming president, who is more excited about Russia than we've had a president ever. Is this a good thing or not? But let's start with how surprising is this? I feel it is an unusual development, although perhaps not considering the cast of characters, but still. Dmitry, let me begin with you. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm afraid, well, first of all, it's a little bit pity for me that the Russia appear in the international relations on this such unpleasant image, some unpleasant way, as a country supposedly blackmailed the president-elect. This is the one story. The second story, I'm a little bit afraid, is the current scandal. It's rather based on the biases and prejudice of the Cold War, about the superiority of the KGB, about all these, conspirology beyond all this, everything what's going on in the international scene. I'm a little bit afraid that now it's rather a domestic American story with the kind of, this is the kind of usage the United Russia for the United States domestic discourse, United States domestic discussion. Well, my main concern in this perspective, there's nothing common with the real Russia. So that's.
So this is America fighting an invisible, and fighting a country or enemy that it doesn't really understand.
Yeah, first of all, doesn't really understand. Well, we don't understand Russia either. So
exactly, I was going to say, yes.
Yeah. It's not. Well, nobody could predict the person, and nobody could predict regime, which is irrational in its core. This is not the one of the biggest issues is all the political studies right now is everybody try to rationalize what is doing by the Putin, but sometimes it's just ad hoc policy. It's nothing. Well, I'm afraid they don't have such a idea as a plan or strategy. So well, I'm studying just the language of the political language of the human rights. So what I would say that's the practically no common strategy, no common instructions for the Russian politicians, for the Russian representative, because they simply invented something ad hoc at any moment on the international discussion. So that's why I'm a little bit afraid this is even the idea is this was the big and the very much developed plan to discourage or to disgrade the president-elect. I'm a little bit, it is other extra evaluation of what exactly the KGB or this person could do. Well, they could blackmail people, but I don't think they could really technically and politically and physically intervene in the serious stuff like American election and like United States policies as well.
All right. Alexander, I would think that as a person that has been in the United States for a long time, though originally from Soviet Union, you kind of have a slightly different perspective and view of this. Are you horrified?
Well, I'm not horrified. I'm concerned because this is an unprecedented thing. that we're noticing, like what's going on right now. We have a report that basically is telling us that there is a possibility that a president-elect is actually under the influence of a Russian intelligence or Russian president. And despite all the hysterics that I'm hearing on the right, from the Republican side and from people that actually prefer Trump to Hillary Clinton in an election, this has nothing to do with the Democrats. This has something to do with their national security. And, this is mind-boggling that our president-elect is believing more into the words of Putin comparing to the words of our intelligence. For me, it's not a political, it's just simply patriotic. It's unbelievable. Like even during the height of a Cold War, can you imagine that ever Reagan would say that he is going to believe Brezhnev more than he's going to believe his own intelligence?
But do you
that was never happening before.
In that case, but do you agree that the enemy, that United States and Secret Services and all of this reporting, the enemy that is perhaps is Russia that is being presented to the public, is an accurate representation of the threat?
It is a threat. I don't know what exactly they are telling to the American public because we're only getting the scraps from the official hearings and stuff like that. Obviously, everybody is trying to say, okay, we need to see the proof. And I think once they say that, they don't really understand what they're talking about. This is intelligence. It means that it was collected by some clandestine people or heard somewhere or was stolen somewhere. Nobody's going to give you any kind of proofs of this kind of thing. So we only have these reports, and if you are an American, you just have to believe in this, because this has nothing to do with our internal politics. But
is this something that makes sense to you as Russian?
Yes, of course. Of course. Putin wants to change world perception of Russia without Russia changing anything in its behavior. That's what Putin wants. So if you have a president-elect who is saying from the onset that we need to have a better relationship with Russia without any mentioning that Russia has to change, then excuse me, this is what Putin wants. It's basically the best scenario he can expect. Besides, right. Trump didn't just say that. He was saying something about NATO. He was saying something about our allies in the Far East. He was saying about our commitment to protect the Baltic countries and stuff like that. That's like the Cold War comes as a winning thing for the Russians finally. Because that's what they wanted for the last 75 years, to NATO stop functioning, for our commitment to the allies actually start faltering, for very weak American president, and total disregard for the rule of law in the world. That's what Russia wanted always.
So we have Russia snatching victory from the jaws of defeat here.
Basically,
okay.
Basically, without firing a shot, with only one guy changing it all for them. It's like Christmas came early.
All right. Representative Jorgensen, you are a state legislator, up until just now. So, and what I would really like to understand is, and I think and have people understand, what options, Wisconsin went through a recall with Governor Walker, and that was quite, I think, an educational experience as much as a personal one. What are your thoughts on how this situation could, what options could there be? How could this play out with Mr. Trump?
Well, I think this is a long-term game that's being played by Russia. It's been going on for a while. I mean, there are lots of things in the news right now, but for the moment, I'd like to back up and tell you, the viewers, how I started watching something that is now in the news. The propaganda machine by Russia is in the United States. I had no idea until I had heard one of my favorite newscasters or talk show hosts. His name is Ed Schultz. He left MSNBC and he landed on I read an article how he landed on something called RT. And I'd never heard of it before. And that stands for Russia Today.
That's all what all the crazy kids are watching or something like that. Okay.
It's a propaganda machine.
Well,
Propaganda machine, right?
well, it is, and it's pretty. I'm going to say, I probably should say it's concerning. It is, but it's also scary because it's in living rooms right now. And Yuri, you and I know we have friends that talk about RT as a place that they go to see Ed Schultz, as I brought up, or Larry King, or Tom Hartman. But there's also conservative talk show hosts on there. And so people are probably saying, well, doesn't sound propaganda to me. Well, it is, and it's very effective and smart. Let me explain. When you have names like that on a TV station, you have some concerns, you've heard things about it, and you see Larry King is on tonight, well, your defenses go down. You go, this can't be bad. I know Larry King. And you start to watch. And it's not so much what Larry King himself says, but it's those commercials in between. It's the newscasts that are on each end of his show. And they are sympathizing with Russia. And it's not just my opinion. Now we've gone for a full circle with this conversation. It just came out in the briefings that our president-elect got that not only did Russia hack into our elections, into the DNC, they were also running this propaganda machine on what? RT. And another one called Sputnik, which I'm not familiar with, but that's how they're pushing this fake news. And now you hear in the news that President-elect Trump is using fake news and pointing it at CNN and other entities of the news and ones that he feels aren't treating him fairly. When really the fake news is spelled out in these reports, and it's coming from stations like RT. Now, folks, if you ever turn it on, have your tinfoil hat on. No, I'm just kidding. But no, if you turn it on, you'll see there are no commercials. There's just these promos about how bad other news sources are, and you should only watch this one. And isn't it rich to hear something that's support? And the reason there's no commercials is it's supported by the Kremlin. The Kremlin is paying for this. Now, isn't this something? Their motto? Your guests should get a kick out of this. Their motto is question more. In other words, Putin wants us as Americans to question more. And so you wonder what the goal is here. And I think one of the goals is to just create chaos, to erode our democracy, and to always have the bad side of things. And if Putin needs some help in our news over here, to give that as well. And that's what's going on in stations like that. And it really concerns me where this is going to go 5-10 years from now. For instance, Fox News wasn't as powerful as they were from day one as they were 10 years later. Where are we going with something like this? And how common will it be for people to be watching something called Russia Today in America?
Right. And the same way that KFC is no longer Kentucky Fried Chicken, it's just KFC. RT is no longer Russia Today, it's just RT. And everyone can guess what it could possibly stand for. Interesting. Andy, I love your perspective. Dmitry, do you feel that this fighting with media is something that, how does this experience works in Russia? And what role do you feel the media plays in preparing the ground for this kind of, I don't even know, leader to come in?
Well, that's a good question, because first of all, in the situation of the so-called post-truth we are living in, so especially in Russia, it is the common formula for the media. This media is not the source of information anymore. So nobody believed the media could provide the real information. Media provided is the national view or the national interest, and now, even today, it was a special order which added TASS in other state informational agencies to the list of their special security objects. So this is everybody accepted as treated as a military. The thing is for the military purposes. So this is not the media, is not the information exchange. This is not the marketplace of ideas. This is something originally created for the informational war, for the perspective of Russia. That's why nobody believes in media. I mean, as a source for the truth within the country, and also everybody believes that the other media do the same. So in this perspective, in this situation, is nobody trusts nobody. That is a very interesting story. But on the Russian side, we have information war, we have the falsification of the knowledge, the fake news, whatever. For the American side, we have the absolutely different. This is imbalance in the informational exchange. If the one country working as a they living in the war, like a war with Nazis, for example, and the other country, I mean United States, living in the situation of the multiple choice, pluralism, whatever. And I believe the United States media simply underevaluate the real influence of the Russia Today as a kind of absolutely different tool, because this is originally, and since the origin it was planned, not as the media. It's an absolutely different story. It's a tool of informational war.
All right. Alexander, let me then take this to you and say that if you are somebody who is engaged in this information war, you have your foxhole that you're occupying with your blogs and your writings, do you think that there will be a day where Alexander Flint will be asking a question at a White House press conference? Or how is this, what role do independent journalists and independent writers and independent bloggers have versus organizations such as RT or CNN, those fake news over there? Your thoughts?
Well, let me get back first a little bit. You see, I agree with both our colleagues here, what they say. And, I just want to add something that, you see, you have to understand whom you're dealing with. Putin and his government is ex-KGB operatives. So they operate the government and international relations as a certain spy game in a way. So they use, for instance, the gas pipe to the Western Europe as a weapon. They use RT or million others, smaller networks or websites that they create daily as a weapon, not as information, but as a weapon. So we're dealing right now with a war. Open war. It's basically, it can be called Cold War II. We need to stop being afraid using this term, because that's what we have right now. So once you understand that, then you have to think, what can you do to fight that? Back in the Soviet Union days, that was a very, very effective weapon. Everybody was listening to American news on the radio, or BBC on the radio, or Canadian radio, or Israeli radio. It was like a fresh air inside Soviet Union. So right now, for some reason, these stations and this information is no longer there. And I think it should be there again. So, I don't know, maybe Voice of America have to get like a way bigger grant and start really looking into more propaganda counter to the RT. Because RT is a state-sponsored channel. And that's why they they have the money to hire the best talents they can get in the world. And, everybody believes them because they provide like a different view on what's going on in America, for instance. Some people, another problem is that a lot of people who voted for Trump, they believe in unfairness of American system right now. So they're looking for the news. They're going to support that point of view. So they're going to look for something RT going to say, you know what, you live in America, but America is not good for you because they are hiding this and this information, because there's a corrupt politicians in Washington. And nobody else telling you this but us. But they are not doing it because they care for America. They do this to undermine our love for the country. Like just listen to what Trump was saying once he was getting elected. Make America great again. What, America stopped being great? When?
All right.
So he is basically like this kind of a nostalgic feeling, we're going to go back to the greatness, and I'm the only vehicle for that. I think it's wrong.
Representative Jorgensen, let me ask you this. Then, as this conversation comes back to you, do you feel that RT should be banned? Should these kinds of outfits be banned, and we shouldn't be, exposing people to this kind of a danger or virus or whatever you want to call it? Or should we kind of escalate this war and start spending some of our money to boost our message?
I don't like the word banned. In fact, I go a whole different way. I think what we need to do is, I truly believe in my heart of hearts, knowledge is power, and to just expose RT for what it is. And it's no longer an opinion that we may think it's a Russian sympathizing propaganda machine. We know it is. Our intelligence said it in their report that they helped spread fake news during our elections. They were an operative on this, and they are coming right from the Kremlin. We know that Putin himself gave the order to unleash this plan. So that's what we know. All right. So it's no longer, that's the way I think. I consider it fact. And so what I would do is tell people that this is a propaganda machine, and the people that are on it, like Larry King of all people, Ed Schultz, as I mentioned, Tom Hartman and others, I think they should be somewhat, and I'd like to hear what your guests think, shamed for being a part of what we know now as a propaganda machine for what I consider the enemy. They should be shamed for being on such a vehicle such as that. I think that is a better way of approaching this. And this is just totally my idea of how to handle something like this. But I think pointing it out and making sure that people don't get normalized by this is what we should do to counteract it. Now, I understand this too, Yuri, that this RT, this whole idea of a propaganda machine is something that Russia pumps into Ukraine on a pretty consistent basis. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe one of your guests could say yes, agree with that or not. But that's what I've heard, that this is something that they've perfected with trying to deal with Ukraine.
But that's also, I'm obviously absolutely love to hear what my guests have to say. My understanding is a lot of Russian language channels have been actually banned in several countries around Russia, precisely for the reason that it's just considered to be harmful to, by whatever government there is, whether it's corrupt or westernized, they still feel it's a threat to have this kind of broadcast right in their country. So they
well, you're right.
They did.
You're right. I mean, Fox News.
But
you can't get Fox News in Canada, for instance.
Correct.
There's a law against lying up in Canada. So they've got a lot of freedoms we enjoy here in America. But yeah, you're right. I don't know if they have RT in there. I'm probably thinking not if they don't have Fox News, but they have a law against being insincere and not being a news station, and so you can't be broadcast there. So it's not out of the realm. It's just I think I would take the route of exposing them for what they are, and then those people that are on it I just can't believe that they're there, shaming them into getting off.
All right.
I think banning just RT just by itself is not just going to do that. I think because people are thirsty for information. So if we ban one thing, they're just going to get out with another one. I think it has to be an alternative. It used to be very effective that Voice of America was basically the only radio that people were listening. Or why don't they make some sort of a TV out of it? I understand that it's not going to be in the United States because you can't have propaganda in here in the United States, but it can be working for Eastern Europe, or it can work for Ukraine, it can work for Russia, it can work everywhere. It can work from, let's say, for instance, from internet, which is still free there. But, just banning one thing, it means that we're just creating a vacuum that is just going to be filled by somebody else. So they're going to take Ed Schultz out of there. They're going to add up somebody else.
So rather than saying that we're not going to be using this kind of weapon, let's use it more effectively against the people.
Kinda.
Interesting. Dmitry, what do you think?
Well, first of all, it's very much remind me the challenge for the democracy when the terrorists tried to attack the country. And if we accepted the idea of the security is prevailing the human rights, we will lose immediately the democracy as such. That is exactly the terrorist goal. I would say it is that terrorist attack, information war of the Russia Today, or RT, is exactly intended to transform the American democracy. And I would say, keeping in mind such challenge, we should be very careful to announce the needs to use the counter propaganda as such, because truth is the best weapon against the lie. Sorry for these banal words. And secondly, which seems to me very important, I truly believe in the Magnitsky list, and I truly believe this exactly the person who personally, every propaganda, this propaganda is abstract, but the people who are doing the propaganda, they have names and addresses, how Putin said once for a different reason. The problem is those journalists who has organized the campaign against the human rights activists, against the democratic opposition in the country, they are easily possessing their property, and they spending the vacation in the United States. I believe such people truly deserve to be put into the Magnitsky list. Not because I'm against the freedom of speech, but I truly believe in the personal responsibility. So because this person is not the journalist anymore. They are exactly the person who literally, practically, and personally involved in the human rights abuses within Russia. So I would say, except the counter-propaganda would be very productive and very efficient just to put all these persons into the Magnitsky list. That will be very, very good measure against the Russia Today, I believe.
You're listening to WSUW 91.7 FM, The Edge in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This is Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. Today's discussion, we're really started with Trump, and that's always a good place to start. But from there, the conversation shifted really to a debate about RT, which is really Russia Today. And so there's debate not necessarily about whether RT provides information or not, or news or not, but how to deal with the fact that it is providing disinformation. And interesting, I think, debate any time about the role of media in providing us with, helping us to make decisions whatever we want to decide. For this discussion today, I'm excited to be joined by Dmitry Dubrovsky, who is a scholar at Harriman College at Columbia University in New York City, and Alexander Flint, who is in New York area also, and he's a popular Russian language blogger who's ironically joining us right now in English for the remaining minutes of our discussion. And finally, I'm very excited, of course, to have on the program with me former Representative Andy Jorgensen, a 5-term legislator from State Assembly in our great state of Wisconsin here, where this program broadcasts as well. I believe this is the first time. Well, no, we had one more guest that was in Wisconsin. This is very exciting. So, Alexander, let me turn to you and kind of get your take on where we go from here. What are you planning on doing? Are you going to be paying attention to fake news? How are you going to distinguish? What are you going to do?
Well, it's a good question. Basically, I listen to only news that actually have some big names to it. Like, for instance, even if I listen to CNN, then I listen to, for instance, ABC. It's a very good scenario to avoid fake news, because this kind of a big news channels, they try to avoid fake as much as possible, because it's basically against their own principles, and it undermines their own message. So I try to stick to these. But another thing is that, you see, it's not just about news. There's just a belief right now, because we're dealing with a political scandal, not just purely problem with the national security. A lot of people that voted for Trump, they don't want to believe anything that's coming against them. So it can be intelligence report, it can be CNN, it can be New York Times, it can be even a Fox News channel. They're still not going to believe it, because they trust more into Trump than they trust into any news that actually discredits him. And his press conference today actually was a very, very good example how it works. People don't care. So I think the only thing that we can do is this. I think there's supposed to be a very thorough investigation of what's going on. They have to come up with a report telling us, okay, is it really truth, or, okay, we can just go on and we just know that there is some unexplainable love that Trump has for Russia. Then we can deal with it. If there is something behind it, then we have to deal according to the law. But my own personal position, I'm just going to spread information. I'm just going to keep writing my reports. I'm going to try to analyze as much as I can, see what I can expose, and just do this. You know, I was actually instrumental in preparing this Magnitsky list back about 5 years ago and everything like that. So maybe I can just do the same thing right now. You know, and I think it's every American citizen is supposed to be concerned by that. It's not just me because I came from Russia.
Alexander, I think you really bring an excellent point because, as Dmitry said, of the personal accountability about the sanctions, at the same time, you're taking it in a direction of personal respect for the source of information. So you trust a specific person because, you have a few, for whatever reason you choose to trust a particular person versus a news organization versus or even anything like that. So I'd like to close by asking State Representative Jorgensen, Andy, what do you think we should be doing here as Americans?
Well, it's really a challenge, isn't it? Because it's like drinking from a fire hose right now, trying to keep an eye on all that's going on with our president-elect Trump, and we need to. But you've got the newfound scandal that broke overnight. You've got the confirmation hearings that are going on. The scandal is three-pronged. I mean, it has to do with is our president-elect compromised, but did they also collude with his campaign during the campaign? There's all kinds of things going on all at once, and some of these are done by the design. But our process is one of the best in the world, and we can only hope and have faith that it will flesh out. And I really have to give credit to some who are Republicans, as is our president-elect, that are also joining the group that is questioning things, like Senator Lindsey Graham, who I've never really cared for in the past, never really lined up with what he's been selling. But I do like how he is keeping an eye on what's going on. And he said it best this morning. He said, he seems very puzzled by the whole thing that's going on this idea, is our president-elect compromised? He said, I think he's right on China. I think he's right on Israel. I think he's right on Iran. I think he's right on various other things. But when it comes to Russia, it's so curious. His behavior does a complete flip and changes. And what I'm appreciative of on that, again, I'll say, it's someone that is from his side of the aisle. So in America, we've been, up until just recently, we've been used to having these questions come from not just Democrats or Republicans, if you happen to be one or the other, but we've got an independent stuck in there, a true love for our country and understanding of the dangers we face that we need to face together, not as a political party. And I'm glad to see that some get it, like Senator Lindsey Graham, like Senator McCain. These are guys that so far, they're only a couple, but hopefully that will grow as time goes on.
And as scary as it is, it sounds like Senator Marco Rubio may have joined that list.
And who else? Couple more. Ben Sasse, who was against Trump in the beginning, and then maybe a senator from Arizona. He's also was saying something against Trump in the beginning. So, and I think there is about 5-6 senators that I would probably count into the opposition that may be in the Senate against Trump.
And I hope today, after
McCain.
After this circus of a press conference today, I mean, this is nothing we are used to. How that played out as well. An attack on a particular reporter really stole the show, if you will, and from CNN saying you're fake news. And I mean, what president does that? His behavior is so unbridled. I mean, how would you like to be advising him? And believe me, there are people that are. But it would be such a challenge because this guy might agree to go and say one thing and then start talking about a bad review he got from Vanity Fair. I mean, this is a guy that just is unhinged. I believe emotionally, and I believe there's a lot of underlying problems that he has, and now there are problems because things that he does, things that he says, could potentially get us into some really bad situations, maybe war, maybe economically taking a downturn by him not knowing, saying something from the hip. I mean, we have got a whole bunch of problems. But let's just back up and kind of look at what we were talking about today. He is acting very strange when it comes to Russia. And we find that there are some things that we need to pay attention as Americans to that have come out from our intelligence agencies that we need to keep an eye on as well. And maybe that list of people that are questioning, especially Republicans that are doing so, will grow. And maybe we'll be able, as more information comes to light, we'll learn more and the right thing will happen. And we'll have to debate another day as to what that is.
Thank you. Well, you're listening to WSUW 91.7 FM, The Edge in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This is Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. I want to thank my guests today, Representative Andy Jorgensen, a former representative, as Alexander Flint, a blogger in New York area, and Dmitry Dubrovsky, researcher at Harriman College at Columbia University. Thank you so much for the conversation, and let's buckle up and see what happens.
Anytime.
Thank you, Yuri.
You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW in Whitewater, Wisconsin. You're listening to Rashkin Report.